Okay, so this video is on section 7.4, which is properties of special parallelograms. And so we know what a parallelogram is. A parallelogram is quadrilateral, so a four-sided figure with opposite sides parallel. Now we're going to have three specific ones that we have to learn about. We have to learn about rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. We have to know how to figure out when it's one of those shapes. We have to know the different rules, and then we have to be able to find measures and solve equations based on those rules. Okay? There's three assignments that you'll have to be able to do after the notes. So, our first special shape is a rectangle, and a rectangle is a parallelogram with four right angles. If you see one right angle box, that's good enough. You do not have to have right angle boxes in all four. Okay? So, what's nice about a rectangle is since it's a parallelogram, it already has rules 1 through 4. Opposite sides equal, opposite angles equal, adjacent angles add up to 180, and diagonals bisect. So rules 1 through 4 are the same. There is one additional rule, and that additional rule is that the diagonals are congruent. So not only do they bisect, but they're the same measure. So EG is congruent to FH. So that's the one new rule you have for rectangles. Okay? So let's look at some examples for rectangles. What we need to do, we need to find the missing measures. Well, I know it's a rectangle, so I know this is a box. So I know that those two angles together equal 180. So 90 minus 48 is 42. So now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to see if you could fill in those numbers like we practiced the other day. It's the same concept with alternate interior, opposite, triangles, all that. So here's the door of pause for you to go ahead and see what you can do. Okay, so you should have all gotten at least this. Now this problem's a little harder, but what we should recognize is that the diagonals are equal and they're bisected. So that means all of these little things are the same. So what we have is we have four isosceles triangles. And on isosceles triangles, base angles are equal. So if this angle's 48, this is the other base angle, so it's also 48. If this is 42, over here's the other base angle, so that's also 42. And look, those add up to 90. So this one's 48, so this one's 48. This one's 42, so this other base angle's 42. So now what we need to do is we just have to find one of these. Okay? So I know the three angles add up to 180. So for this triangle, those three have to add up to 180. So 42 plus 42 is 84. 180 minus 84 is 96. So I know that this angle is 96. Now, it's obvious that it's not 96. It looks much bigger than that. But remember, pictures aren't drawn to scale. Usually they're there for a reference for you to understand what's going on. Okay, so if this one's 96, the top one's 96, and then these two are 84 because those make lines. Okay. All right, so here's the door of pause. Make sure you have that all down. Okay, last problem with rectangles. Our last problem with rectangle, it says given that the rectangle ABCD. So let's draw that rectangle. Whenever you get stuck or whenever anything's happening, you need to draw this picture. So A, B, C, D. It tells me that A to C is 5x minus 2. And then it also tells me that B to D is 2x plus 10. Well, those are diagonals. And rule number 5 for rectangles says that diagonals are congruent. So I just need to set those two things together. 5x minus 2 equals 2x plus 10. Minus 2x on both sides. And I get 3x minus 2 is 10. So you get 3x is 12. So x is 4. So I drew the picture to help me recognize what I was talking about because I didn't know if I was going to be adding them or what I was doing, but diagonals were equal. Okay, so here's the door of pause to make sure you have it all down and you're ready to go on to the next part. All right, our second shape is a rhombus. And What makes a rhombus special is that it's a parallelogram with 4 equal sides. So last time we had 4 equal angles that were all 90. Now we have 4 equal sides. Now, because it's a parallelogram, rules 1 through 4 apply, and they're the same. And the same are opposite sides equal, opposite angles equal, adjacent angles 180, and diagonals bisect each other. Rhombus have 2 extra rules. The first rule is that the diagonals are perpendicular. So when I draw this diagonal, there's right angles in the middle. All of those right angles are 90 degrees. The last rule is that the diagonals bisect angles. So this angle right here is cut in half. This angle over here is also cut in half. So the diagonals cut them in half. Okay, looking at the example, this is a rhombus, and I'm finding the missing measures. Well, it says that they're cut in half, so this one's 38. And opposite or equal, so these are 38. Now the question is, what are the other ones? The best way to find the other one is for us to draw this again and know what this big angle is. And that big angle, there's 2 38, so 38 times 2 is 76. And this one's 76. Well, remember our rule that adjacent angles add up to 180? Well, 180 minus 76 is 104. So here, that whole angle is 104, but it's just been bisected. So I have to bisect that by doing 104 divided by 2, which is 52. So these angles here are 52. So the last thing I need to do is I need to find the middle, but again, those are right angles. So they're all 90s. And you don't have to write all the right angle boxes, you could just do one. Okay? All right, so here's Dora for you to pause the video and get caught up. All right, finally our last section is on squares. Well, a square is a parallelogram with 4 right angles and 4 equal sides. So really what a square is it's a rhombus rectangle, because it's both of those things together. So 4 equal sides and 4 right angles. And again, you don't have to write all. If you got 1 right angle, the rest have to be right angles. Now, because it's a parallelogram, rules 1 through 4 apply. But it's also a rhombus and it's also a rectangle. So any rule that we've written in the past couple days applies for squares. Squares get all the rules. So their diagonals are equal, their diagonals bisect angles, their diagonals bisect each other, the diagonals are perpendicular. There's a lot of different rules. Okay, last one, finding some measures. Well, it's a square, so I know that these together make 90. And I know that these are 90. Centers are 90s. But this one's been cut in half. So 90 divided by 2 is 45. But they're the same over here, and it's the same idea here. So all the interior angles at the corners are 45s. The center ones are all 90s. Okay, so last time for Dora, make sure you get all that stuff written down. And so remember, when you have your rules, always the first 4 rules apply, but for rectangles, the additional rule for rectangles is that the diagonal is congruent. The additional rule for rhombus is that the diagonals are perpendicular and they bisect angles, and then squares have all the rules that we've seen yet.